fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell out before you blow up a plane.
Basha K. Ali!
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what good you say I doubt people stand up to something. I haven't been disrespectful to you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean.
Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr Podcast. We are on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Rumble, Rockfin. We're live on Rumble right now, actually. We will be doing the first part of this podcast. We're going to see as much as we can do on YouTube as possible. We may switch over just to Rumble. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, I got a couple of stand-up shows coming up. If you're in the Jersey area, come see me July 8th. I will be at Tiff's in Morris Plains, New Jersey. Great show. I'll be there with Keanu Thompson. Then I will be in Richmond, Virginia, August 9th at the Sandman Comedy Club. Then I'll be in Houston for Anime Matsuri, August 10th through the 13th. And I will be at the Secret Group headlining that Friday, August 11th. So get your tickets now. Go to ChrissieMayr.com. I can't wait to see you guys. Can't wait to make you laugh. I'm booking new shows all the time. So if there's a venue or a comedy club near you, tweet at them, tag me, get in their ear, call them. Let these people know that you need some Chrissie Mayr in your life to make you laugh. All right. I am so excited to have this guest. I'm not generally very starstruck by many people, but I met this man a couple of weeks ago when I was in Dallas. I bumped into him at the Blaze, and I literally had a mini stroke because I was so excited to meet this guy. He's an internist, cardiologist, I can't even say it, epidemiologist, chief scientific officer of the Wellness Company. He has commented extensively on the medical response to the medical crisis we all went through. Guys, remember that? He is just a fighter for medical freedom. He is actually the most published cardiologist ever in America. And I'm so excited that he's here with me today. Dr. Peter McCullough, hello.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm so honored to be on your show. And actually, it was great to meet you in person at Blaze. So cute, so fun. I was on just ahead of you on Alex Stein, and I bombed out. I wasn't funny at all. And then you went in there and just lit it up. And I saw the videos, and I was like, gosh, I'm just a boring doctor. I can't really have any fun. It bothers me.
It really makes me feel so good to hear you say that, because as I'm getting ready to interview, I'm having like the exact opposite reverse feeling, like, I only have a measly bachelor's in communications. Like, how am I going to talk to this guy? He's a bajillion times smarter than me. And I'm just figuring out like what questions to ask. What do people want to know? Because the way that you feel, there's so much of what you said that's out there. If people want to really get into the nitty gritty on the topics that, of course, we can't talk about on YouTube in great detail, all that information is out there. You're very prolific. You've been on so many shows. But what I'm interested in getting into is, and I have so many people on, I interview comedians, adult film stars, politicians, political people, influencers, and the common theme of people that I love talking to are people that are kind of fight censorship in their own way, or they go against the mainstream media and they are slapped with labels. Like one of the first things that comes up when people Google you is, disinformation. And I love talking to people who get slapped with that label because it means they're onto something.
Well, listen, Chrissy, I just got a new label last week. Actually 3 days ago, I testified for 2 days in the Arizona Senate. And it was a bicameral set of committee meetings. And, it was on a set scientific topic that's kind of affected the country for the last 3 years. I have over 60 peer-reviewed publications on the topic. I've, testified 3 times in the U.S. Senate. I co-chaired the big sessions, multiple state senates. Treated patients with the problem. So I'm very qualified to give my opinion. So it was myself and other very qualified doctors. We had an obstetrician gynecologist who's practicing, a infectious disease doctor. Other specialists came, pulmonary critical care, and we had senators and House members, and there were people in the gallery. Do you know what the Rolling Stone, how they reviewed this? They said that it was QAnon conspiracy theorists that were spreading misinformation, QAnon, and it turned out that it was being live streamed by a medical freedom person. It turns out this woman's, she's a mother and she has 2 kids at home, and she's a medical freedom person. And he said it's being live streamed by someone who's a dark, he used the word dark, conspiracy theorist. I said, how could he characterize this nice mother who's just trying to get the information out? So that's how it was characterized in the Rolling Stone. So the real question is, why would the Rolling Stone take an interest in Arizona Senate? I mean, there's lots of Senate hearings. It's boring. It's not entertainment. It's not rock and roll. I'm not Mick Jagger, or, I'm not, anybody of any interest to the Rolling Stones. Why would the Rolling Stone magazine pick this up and want to, even before it happens, characterize it this way? I don't know what QAnon is. I don't even know how to spell it.
I think it starts with a Q. Yeah, I was also slapped with that label. It's like, just for questioning the mainstream, just for voting for Trump, being a Republican, being conservative at all, having a flag in your background. It seems like very little these days qualifies you for being a part of QAnon. So,
well, I disappoint so many because I tell them, listen, I'm an independent voter. I've actually voted for qualified people, whether they're Republicans or Democrats or independents. And they're like, gosh darn it, as an independent, we can't throw him in one tribe or the other. I said, no, I just vote for qualified people. Is that okay? And it just drives people crazy. The reporters we're in a time of tribalism. People want to put you in a specific tribe. And as soon as you go there, then the counter tribe attacks the tribe, and it goes back and forth. And you see this partisan media now, which is, this started a while back. Some people thought it actually started with Newt Gingrich started this. But the typical mainstream media, or even now on various media platforms like this, the host will take a chunk of red meat and throw it up there and say, okay, here's the issue. Now bring in our panel. And all the panels just foaming at the mouth, and they're just, and they start yelling at each other, and immediately it's contentious. And it gets to the point where so many Americans are fatigued on this. They ask, what happened to the time of reporters being respectful? And it used to be in media what's called the Fair Balance Act, where media actually had to be fair. I think it's called a doctrine. And it was President Bush Jr. who threw it out. And when that went out, the media actually had no obligations to show both sides of the story.
Wow. So did you always want to pursue medicine? Is it what you wanted to be when you were a little boy?
Yeah, I came out of the womb. Now, I didn't have red hair like you. By the way, my son is a brilliant redhead. When he was born, there was a red glow around his head. And my wife and I looked, we said, oh my gosh, how did this happen?
She birthed a Jim. Uh-oh, but he is soulless if he's natural.
Yeah, Chrissy, only 3% of Americans are redhead. Let me tell you what. And redheads are a hot commodity. He's already married. He's already snapped up. And redheads don't stay single for very long. And,
No, we don't.
but I can tell you, when I was born and I came out right away, I knew I wanted to be a doctor because I loved science and I really wanted to help people. And that's usually the commonality of people who go into all kinds of healthcare fields, not just doctors, but nurses and therapists. And, there's 10 different doctors. A lot of people don't know this. They think a doctor is an MD, but there's also a DO, a doctor of osteopathy, which is largely a similar.
Bones.
Yeah. Well, no, osteopathy is actually, it's an older term, but it's largely doing the same thing that MDs do. There's also chiropractors. So that's the musculoskeletal
Yeah.
system.
I
Yeah,
had scoliosis when I was in middle school. We went to the chiropractor all the time. And
Is that right? Wow.
I didn't have to wear a back brace or anything, but we had to go in for corrections or whatever it was called.
Yeah. Well, the
Yeah.
chiropractor did a great job. So many of the guys who I hang out with, they follow you on Instagram, and they always remark at just these incredible workouts you're doing. Where you're doing this lordotic arch and lifting something, then you're doing something else. And one time I tried to follow you, and I tried to put my foot over, and I just fell over. I said, "Boy, I could never keep up with Chrissy and
I
in the
appreciate
gym."
that. It's, getting married, having a big wedding with all your friends and family is a powerful motivator to get into shape. And I recommend it for everybody. And I'm really trying not to put out videos that are what they call thirst traps. Like I don't have makeup on. I'm not filtering these videos. I'm really trying to just show, because it's like it's work. I'm not like trying to look cute. Like I want to show people like you have to work at this anyway. But
No, I think you
thank
do.
you.
You look serious, but you definitely have got your game on, no doubt about it. Now, do you plan on have any thoughts about kind of your husband and the media? So is he going to be in the media with you, or have you thought about it?
He kind of is. He helps me with this podcast a lot. He has a background in producing comedy. That's how we met. He produced comedy shows up in Westchester in New York here, now where we live. And that's how we met. And we kind of bonded over comedy. And we're actually perfect together because he doesn't have to be the center of attention or on camera. He's been on camera. Like, we've done some shows together and we've done some projects together, but he is, he helps me book guests. He helps with my YouTube. He helps all with the back end stuff. And he has like a producer mind, and he's like a big picture guy. And he and I have similar taste in interesting people to have on the show. But it's really just the two of us and a couple guys that I have do my clips, and like that's the whole crew. But we definitely have a shared vision and shared goals, and we've been together like 8-9 years, so he has a good sense of like, okay, like the trolls attack like me mostly, but sometimes him, and we handle it all like pretty decently.
Well,
So
you'll probably
it's a
find that
balance.
you probably find, if you've ever looked, Chris, you have a lot of guy followers. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes when you're a single gal and big in media like you are. So if you ever checked, I'm sure you have a lot of guy followers. But if you show him a little bit in the media, and I'm sure he's very handsome, his name is probably Fabio. You just kind of give him a little flash. Give him a little flash. The guys will say, "That's it. I knew it. I knew she had a really handsome husband." So that will kind of verify, and I found this out myself because I'm in the media a lot, and I've checked it out. It turns out about 80% of my followers are women. And,
Wow.
yeah, and they're typically ages in the 40s, 50s, 60s, even early 70s.
Ooh.
And they found, and they almost all are well married, children or grandchildren, and they follow me because they know something's going wrong out there, and with the whole crisis, and they're saying that doctor makes sense. The doctor conveys some honesty with what's going on, but because of this, I've become a public figure. And I had
Would you
previously
say you've
done it-
become a bit of a sex symbol as well?
No. You should say I've got a scoliosis that never got fixed. I can't stand straight, and I've been married for 35 years. But what I'm telling you is every so often I actually have to show my wife in the media. Now it turns out my wife is very attractive, and so when she's in the media, immediately the girls who follow me said, "I knew he had a pretty wife. I knew he," and they'll go on and there'll be all this chatter. So I think a lot of times you need to do that just to show your audience that you're grounded, because our spouses actually do have to really support us in this. Now, I had been in the media before. I had testified in U.S. Congress and Congressional Oversight Panel for the FDA back in 2007. I was on C-SPAN for hours. I had lectured at the New York Academy of Sciences, European Medicine Agency. I'd lectured all over the world. I was a named endowed visiting professor at Harvard just in 2019 before things hit. So I was already a public figure in medicine. What I was not involved with was social media at all.
You're great on social media. You're like, you respond on Instagram and Twitter, and like you retweet. You're very good.
But I do it all myself. And I learned through this whole process. I wasn't involved in social media. My daughter is the first one to suggest I make a YouTube video. And I made one on my first scientific publication on the crisis, which turns out to be a pretty important one. And I just made 4 slides. I was showing the major tables and figures in the publication. It was published in the American Journal of Medicine, and I've published in New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet. I've published in all the best journals. But I went to American Journal of Medicine because I saw New England Journal of Medicine becoming corrupted. I saw some things that just didn't look right. I went to American Journal of Medicine, which is a US-based journal, and it was published quickly. And when I made the first YouTube video, just as a doctor, I wore a tie and had a suit coat on. There was no profanity. It was very, very professional. And within, a few days, violates the community rules, strike. And I was censored off. And you know what happened after that? I got a phone call from Senator Ron Johnson. He says, "My name is Senator Ron Johnson. I want to talk to you about a YouTube video that was struck down."
Wait, when was this? What year was this?
Okay. This was the fall of 2020.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So some stuff happened to me. Earlier in 2020, I had one of the first investigational new drug applications for a medicinal product to fight the illness. And then it became known that I was taking a leadership role, and I was on some National Institutes of Health calls. And earlier in 2020, I got a phone call in the middle of the clinic from Peter Navarro. He goes, "My name is Peter Navarro from the White House, and I'm asking for your help." So I actually got involved early, first from the White House and then the U.S. Senate. But what got people's attention is me just presenting a scientific paper and having YouTube censor it. And the issue came up is, how in the world can YouTube censor a peer-reviewed scientific publication, which is still, you can look at it today. It's one of the most widely read papers in the last 3 years of the American Journal of Medicine. Why would they have an interest in doing that? And then how can they violate free speech? And it's talking about, this is speech at the highest level, meaning scientific interchange. People depend on scientific interchange in order to advance this field of medicine. So this isn't like just cracking jokes or something like this. This is communication at the highest level. Medical censorship, medical information, I would argue, is so darn important. We wouldn't want to censor anything. Just like, let's take airline safety. If the engineers were presenting a paper on evaluating, the flight worthiness of a new airplane wing, we wouldn't want to censor that. We wouldn't want to censor anything that could mislead or misdirect the community.
Right. I want to get back to what you talked about before. It was so interesting that you and your wife have been together for, what you said, 35 years, and how important that support system is and you've been obviously in this field your whole professional career. What was the last 3 years the first time you saw this kind of like political implication come about in such a big way in terms of a decision for treatment, or like have you seen anything like it as far as pushback for you personally, or just politics coming in so strongly?
I've never seen it before. And, I got a sense of it when Peter Navarro called me from the White House. And, I've subsequently met Peter. We've talked and what have you. I can tell you that phone call, my phone was like literally frying up with profanity. Every other word that came out of his mouth. And, I try not to cuss. I really don't. And he couldn't stop. He was so angry because
Whoa.
he had procured an entire stockpile of a medicine that could help people through the illness, but yet other forces were blocking the distribution to Americans or even getting out to pharmacies, and he wanted help. And later on, I learned that billionaire Clive Palmer in Australia, who I also know, former member of parliament, and he founded the United Australian Party. He had procured an entire stockpile of the same medicine, which we found out to be very useful. And the Australian authorities in Australia seized his stockpile that he bought, and they destroyed it. So, in two locations in the world, something was going on that was actually going to block treatment to patients. And somehow I was caught up in this. This was a worldwide plot, if you will. And so, I ended up, after the first year teaming up with a best-selling author, John Leake, and we published a book, Courage to Face It. And you can find it. It's linked on my website. And it's really a 5-star bestseller on Amazon. You can read about 2.5 hours. It's not a boring medical book. It's actually kind of a gripping story of what was going on all over the world. There it is. Yeah. What was going on. And what we had learned is that we were all caught up in some type of plot, if you will, which was much bigger than any one of us. And boy, since we got on the wrong side of this one, we paid the price. Do you know, I've been terminated from 2 jobs for no specific reason. My clinical performance is perfect. I've always been, stellar performance. I never had any performance evaluations before these releases, nothing along these lines. I've been stripped of 2 professorships, either by certified letter or by email. No faculty senate, no review, no courtesy phone call, no explanation. I've been stripped of 2 editorships. Again, no, there's no editorial board meeting. There's no discussion about successorship, nothing. I've been stripped of every NIH committee position, every pharmaceutical consulting position, data safety monitoring boards, event committees, all of it just for no reason, or something that is just appears to be just kind of whipped up, concocted for some reason, we found an unresolved conflict of interest from 10 years ago or something. And it's just, one by one, I just have a list of this. And in our book, there's a chapter called The Stripping, where literally it's just stripping things away from this doctor. I got to tell you, I think the coup de grace on this whole thing is, I was the president of a major medical society called the Cardiorenal Society of America. We had about 600 members, part nephrologist, part cardiologist. We had a journal associated with this, an annual meeting.
Did you guys have like parties and meetups, or was it
no,
like
no, it's not. We're
like
boring
that?
medical people.
Okay.
We don't, we can barely even, we don't get jokes. That's the problem. It's just doctors are so boring. Anyhow, so the boring doctors, we had this society, and I was notified, I think by email. It said, Dr. McCullough, you are hereby being notified that your society has been dissolved. Dissolved. How do you dissolve a society? There was no board meeting. There was no courtesy phone call. There was nothing. So what we've concluded, and by the way, this has happened to me and all the academic doctors in my circle, prominent people, Dr. Didier Rialt in France, the most published microbiologist in the world, former Nobel Prize winners, people all over the world this has happened to. We've concluded that there is a biopharmaceutical complex. There is some type of syndicate that's working out there that is very powerful. They have infinite financial resources, and they've basically said, listen, we are calling the shots on scientific advancement, medicine, and communications. And anybody who stands in our way, we are going to take care of them in any way we see fit. And I think a lot of what's happened has been enabled with what's called countermeasure funding. So countermeasure funding was during the emergency, it was declared through the CARES Act that, at least in the United States, we would mobilize vast amounts of financial resources with no budgeting, with no oversight, and they could be used for a whole variety of purposes as long as they were associated with the pandemic. And so these monies flowed either directly from HHS to healthcare systems and universities, and it flew to the media. Over 4,000 TV stations got money, Hollywood, churches, the NFL, major sports teams, medical societies. We realized that money flowed to the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. That was even before. Yeah, this is early in 2021. American College of Pediatrics, all to push a specific approach to the crisis, a specific substance that was going to be the main thing that was going to influence people's lives and become the subject of mandates, etc. And this complex appears to be all powerful because it's happening all over the world. The same things happened in Australia and South Africa, in Europe and the UK and Indonesia and the Philippines and on and on and on. So, we believe, and we put this in our book, we think actually this is the biggest crime of all time. And the crimes are fraud, that clearly the world's been defrauded on this entire crisis. And then 2, mass negligent homicide. People lost their lives. People lost their lives because of 2 things. 1, the failure to receive early multi-drug treatment. And I was leading that charge worldwide. So I was probably number 1 in the crosshairs on this.
Right. You said the first 72 hours is the most crucial time to act.
Everybody who's listening to this, who's been through it, they know that no single drug is necessary nor sufficient, but we have to use them in combination to reduce the intensity and the duration of symptoms to get people through it. And it's only those people who received no early therapy that ended up in the hospital. It's clear. It's clear. And sadly, it was largely our senior citizens who didn't have access. I mean, they were in congregate living facilities, nursing homes, and elsewhere, or they were isolated in their apartments, and no one could come in to help them. They couldn't go out. They didn't receive early treatment. They were hospitalized. And let me tell you, when they went on the ventilator, that was it. And so I was leading the charge for early treatment. And then because I had so much experience in drug safety, when the new approach came out in December 10th of 2020 and on through 2021, the universal approach for everyone, I was very, very observant over the safety events that started to roll out. And when things started to go bad, and I think the first time I ever spoke out with my concern publicly was in the Texas Senate in March of 2021. Oh boy, that got people's attention. I was on Tucker Carlson within a matter of weeks. His producer called me.
Really? That was
your
first big, I guess, mainstream appearance?
Yeah, so I went on Tucker, and I'd already, again, I've been on the media, I've been on the big TV stations, but I went on Tucker, and I started, again, laying out the data, what had happened, the pandemic response, and he started getting really worked up. I went to his Florida studio, and he, at one point in time, he looked up at the camera. He goes, "If you don't know who that doctor is, you better go look him up because he has authority." And because what I've done is what I've done my whole career is I've cited the scientific literature. And if you notice, when the other talking heads come on, they never cite the information. The other thing that Tucker said at one point in time is he goes, "Who's behind this? Who's behind all of this?" And I looked at him, I said, "Tucker, I'm just a doctor. I'm just telling you what my observations are. It's going to be up to investigative journalists to really figure out what's going on." Well, if you know what happened from there, Tucker spent the next 2 years really exposing a lot on Fox News. Now, meanwhile, I had been on his show a couple times since that time. I was a regular contributor on Laura Ingraham Angle. I went on, many, many times. And I went on with Eric Bolling at Newsmax and Carl Higbee, Amanda Brilhanti. I go on frequently with Dan Ball on One American News. So I go on a lot. I've been on ABC. I did, when I did a whole special on ABC. But that Tucker Carlson really took off, and he exposed a lot. And but it wasn't just about the crisis. Remember, he went into and exposed and investigated. Remember, even the assassination of RFK, of transgenderism, and 2 years later, you saw what happened. Tucker is not terminated, but he's taken off the air. He's still paid by Fox, but has some type of arrangement in his contract where he can't go to another station. So they've effectively silenced Tucker.
Right.
I was in a sense,
years or
until the election, there was an attempt to effectively silence me twice. It hasn't worked because look, I finally made your show, and I've been waiting so long to get invited on your show. But it didn't work because I got invited on the Chrissie Mayr show, and so here I am. But the point is that, wait a minute, anybody who seems to go against the narrative, doesn't matter how big they are. Case in point, do you know who actually just got taken out? Attorney General Ken Paxton in Texas.
Oh, I heard about that. Were they saying that he was drunk or something, or is that someone else?
Over the weekend, the House of Representatives, and believe it or not, it's a lot of Republicans, they voted on 20 articles of impeachment. The first 10 are things that had happened way in the past, these various allegations. There was something that happened, I don't know, last election cycle, with some office workers that blew the whistle on some of his actions in the office, and he actually settled. We actually paid him. He paid him, I think, $2.5 million, and it's all done. And so they're bringing up things that are very old, that have either been settled in the past in court or is over with. And you're an attorney general, so you're a big person. You're going to be out there. And I said, meantime, I think Trump had something like over 4,000 lawsuits. Trump has had $25 million settlement with Trump University stakeholders, whatever. So listen, political figures are no strangers to legal cases and settlements. That should have no bearing on it. That's
scary to them,
right?
Yeah, I guess.
So I think what was happening is Paxton was suing one of the big manufacturers of the mandated products. That was a big deal.
Interesting.
And he actually was going after one of the hospitals in Texas, Children's Hospital, that was doing gender affirming surgeries or transgender surgeries. And I think that's what's going on. I think the complex, or whoever's running things right now, use their influence to get Ken Paxton impeached. So temporarily he's out of power. So these investigations drop. The Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, steps in, and now Paxton has to go through a trial in the Texas Senate. This hasn't happened since I was a kid. I grew up here, and this hasn't happened since the 70s.
Wow. So it seems like so many of these hospitals were caught doing these surgeries. A person would call in and inquire and make it seem like, oh, I'm inquiring for my son or daughter. And then someone on the phone, or receptionist, whoever worked there, would be like, yes, we do that. And then when they tried to confirm it later on, it's like almost like these hospitals were kind of like, caught offering these surgeries, and they had to take it off their website or reword things to make it sound like that they were not offering this to minors.
Well, many states have legislation that's going to really prohibit, life-changing hormonal therapy. Before puberty, they use hormones that affect the pituitary. Later on, it's straight androgens or estrogens, and then banning really what's largely disfiguring surgery. So if you figure the human body of a boy and girl, are natural the way they are, anything that disfigures it obviously for children is very difficult, if impossible, to reverse. Even the hormones can't be reversed. After a month, they cause irreversible changes. So what Georgia, Texas, and a variety of states had legislation advancing to say, listen, this is going to be outlawed to protect the children. And they become adults, they can make their own decisions. But other states like Washington, Oregon, just the opposite, saying that children would have these rights, and even the parents don't even have to know about it. We know that the Obama administration in 2016 actually had written in that gender affirming surgeries must be covered by CMS or commercial insurances. So this has been going on for a while now. So let's say you're an adult guy and say, well, I really want to be a girl. I want to look like a girl, but, still have my sexual preferences with guys. So they literally could start having these procedures. So guys could get breast implants and get hair depolarization and have voice box surgery that makes the Adam's apple less prominent and what have you, and literally dress up and look like a girl. Now, they still had the same male to male sex. I mean, that still goes on, but now so it's almost like in the adult world.
Yeah, where the insurance is covering like their kink or just their meanwhile we have so many A-cup women out there who need these surgeries more, to compete.
You're right. So it's like Obamacare covered basically a big gay kink, and then women who want cosmetic surgery. Now, the number of women with breast implants is about 5% worldwide. Now, by the way, about 5% in the United States. Now, by the way, virtually every super woman working out on Instagram has breast implants. I'm a doctor, so I can I can identify it. No, you would not be in that category.
I would say maybe 30%,
because you're so well endowed. I just said it right now.
I feel like 30 to 40% of my friends have implants, so maybe I'm skewed.
Well, you know what women say, and you know what women say, particularly older, and I have patients and we talk. You know what women really say, especially once they've been married for forever, what have you? Like, why would they want breast implants? Most of them say, you know what? So my clothes fit better. So I just clothes nowadays are not designed for flat-chested women. I mean, it's just the reality. But now the issue is there's really a dark side to this transgenderism, and my research has really uncovered this. And I've got this out there on my Substack, Courageous Discourse. What we've learned is going on about 20 years ago, the Europeans who are ahead of us in transgender medicine, they started to report, I think, a disturbing trend that more and more young people who went to transgender clinics were actually autistic people. They were on the autistic spectrum. This is very important. When I was a kid, autism was 1 in every 10,000 people. Right now, it's 1 in every 36. Autism is the single biggest childhood epidemic we have. It is massive. And so all of these autistic people now are coming forward, getting to the point of puberty, having some gender dysphoria, having some ambiguity, and then they're suggestible. And someone suggests, well, maybe you should change your gender. And they head off in this direction. But this paper by Vander Meesen really caught my attention, where back then, this is a while back, 20% of the young people going forward for gender change had clinical autism. They actually had the diagnosis of autism. That meant the spectrum or the penumbra of cases was much bigger. Now, it's broken wide open. There was a paper by Warrior and colleagues done in hundreds of thousands of transgender individuals. And you know what? Their autistic scores are off the Richter scale. And now, believe it or not, the Autism Advocacy Network of adults with autism has come out strongly in support of transgender medicine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the circle is complete now. Transgenderism is driven by autism. And the question on the table is that fair to the autistic kids? I mean, autism is a tough disease. It's not well treated with drugs, most of it cognitive behavioral therapy. Is it fair to have an autistic child undergo permanent gender change?
Right, because if you had a child with Down syndrome or some other kind of like, I guess, disability, you would never let them go trans. Like, you would be like, hold on a second, they might not be in the right place to decide. Is that a fair comparison to make?
Well, it's true. The Georgia bill does mention that actually people with mental disabilities of all types could be preyed upon. Here's an analogy someone gave to me one time. Said if you saw a young person who had anorexia nervosa, you wouldn't go up to him and say, "Hey, you look fat." You wouldn't do that, right? So it just feeds the pathophysiology. Here, with an autistic person who has gender dysphoria, you wouldn't go up to him and say, "Hey, maybe you should change your gender," because that sets the child down a pathway. So this has gone on now. This is what we understand of the young people who have these procedures. 80% of the time, it's sterilizing. They'll never have kids again. And this decision, by the way, is made before puberty. So how can somebody at age 7 decide whether the reproductive course of their life? The other, terrible parts of this is that about a month of hormonal therapy, it's irreversible. I don't know if you've seen some of these news clips of these girls who wanted to be a guy and then they back out, but they've had a month of hormones. The voice is completely changed.
Yeah. The testosterone, it permanently changes your voice. It permanently deepens it.
Right. And then
it's not reversible.
And then, of course, the mastectomies, this is very important. The mastectomies of young women, when they're done to shape it like a male breast, there's almost no ability to go back and try to reconstruct that again.
So you couldn't just get rid of them and then, oops, just kidding. Can I do implants now? There's probably
Right.
not enough material there to
not
build
enough
off
material.
of.
The nipple is gone. Things are very misshapen. And I don't know if you've seen some of these really diabolical pictures of trying to fashion an artificial penis for
It's
No.
crazy. It's like Frankenstein.
No,
It's
whatever you do, Chrissie, don't show one of these.
I won't.
Talk about getting kicked off YouTube. Don't
I won't.
show one of these.
People
But
have seen them and
basically-
they can go find them if they want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but to describe it, basically, it's taking a relatively large chunk out of one of the thighs or one of the forearms and making something that looks akin to like a sausage. And
It looks like one of those, remember the water weenies when
Yeah,
we were kids? It's like that, but
it looks
flesh
like that.
color
Now, obviously, the
and less
urine doesn't.
fun.
Right, the urine doesn't pass through that. It's not able to achieve an erection. It's kind of impossible to know what purpose it would really serve. And so we're left with a situation where the surgeries are very disfiguring. By the way, the voice box surgery also, honestly, from a medical procedure perspective, it's a real loser. So while it makes the Adam apple less prominent for the girls, the voice box is misconfigured. There's problems. There needs to be follow up on phonation. It's a big problem. The type of situation that we have here is that gender dysphoria measured before all these procedures is X. And then after all the procedures, it doesn't really change. It's not even effective. It doesn't make people happier to do this. And now there's multiple studies showing that mortality, all-cause mortality after a gender change increases. So there's higher rates of homicide, suicide, and death of all causes. There's higher rates of psychiatric burden of disease. I mean, as a doctor, if I did something that actually increased mortality, I would stop. I mean, we just would not do that.
Right.
So doctors and hospitals and nurses and others that are participating in this, they have to know that they're violating their Hippocratic Oath. The Hippocratic Oath says, above all, we will do no harm. Do no harm. They are causing harm. I recently checked the website of Duke University, famous medical institution. They have a tops clinic and a bottoms clinic. Like, this is kind of fun to do this. They're violating their Hippocratic Oath. And, Ken Paxton was going after this in Texas.
Wow.
And now he's been taken out. But transgender medicine is bad medicine, and it should be shut down. It shouldn't be paid for at any level. Now, if there's a man and he's, an adult man and he wants to look like a woman and he's willing to pay for it and do all that, fine. But
you got to save up for it. Pay for it yourself.
Listen to this, Chrissie. By personal communication, I know this vignette. I'll leave it anonymous, but there's a man in the U.S. Army who's becoming a woman. And so he's had breast implants and hormones and hair depillarization and voice box surgery. By personal communication, anonymous, this guy has not been on duty for like 5 months. And guess who's paying for it? You and me, the taxpayer. I don't know if you've seen this, but the digital ambassador for the Navy is a guy who dresses up as a cute girl. I don't know if
I
you've
saw
seen
that.
Yeah. So, something is going on in the minds of people right now that's distorted. And it's happened through the advancement of some of these biological agents, and now with the crisis that we've been through, and we're seeing an absolute explosion. Gen Z, and you and I are not in Gen Z, but those who are in Gen Z right now, it's 20% LGBTQ.
Wow. And it's similar to, we've all seen those women that get too much plastic surgery, or they keep going, they want to look like a tiger or a dragon, or the guy that wants to look like a lizard. And it's like, I guess I'm thinking more specifically of the women that just get tons of plastic surgery and they still don't feel like they're beautiful enough because the problem is in their mind. That's what a lot of this trans stuff reminds me of, because it's like, yeah, your gender dysphoria is in your mind. It doesn't matter. You got to fix that. Work with
Well,
your family, your therapists,
Well, have you ever been banned or warned from Twitter?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
I was banned. I was banned for about 2 months towards the end of 2022. 2 months. And somebody made a hashtag Dr. McCullough. By the way, my hashtag was trending ahead of the World Cup. So I was number one in the
Wow.
universe, number
Good
one,
for
and they
you.
were clamoring to let me back on. They had a vote. It was 98-2, let Dr. McCullough back on. Thousands of people voted. Trump only got 52 to 48. So I
Wow,
kind
you
of
beat him.
smoked him, yeah, on Twitter popularity. But the bottom line is, I got censored. One of the tweets that came up on a Freedom of Information Act. I got a Freedom of Information Act, which is like a really kind of sneaky thing to do.
You
But
got FOIA'd.
yeah, I FOIA'd somebody else, and I found
Ooh.
out the CDC officers were talking about me, and they had one of my tweets from a long time ago, and it was about actually natural immunity, and
Interesting.
it was just
I
that. And
We're
yes,
gonna go into that more when we switch over to Rumble. I wanna focus on during your period of censorship, do you feel like, I guess your colleagues that you were cool with and supported you before you were in the limelight and getting censored, do you feel betrayed by any of them? When did you start to feel like people were turning their backs on you? Who do you feel like had your back? Who do you feel like kind of gave you shade or cut
oh,
off from you?
the fallout was tremendous. So at my institution, I was a professor of medicine. I'm a big academic institution. When I testified in the U.S. Senate, there was emails from the CEO. They took half a day off. They were cheering. Dr. McCullough is a national hero. Within 2 months, I was called into a room and effectively terminated. And I
Wow.
have this all in my book. It's like, what happened? My boss was so outraged. Within a few months, he retired. He goes, I'm out of here. They're going to do this to Dr. McCullough. I'm out of here. And then
Wow.
people started to peel back. They started saying, listen, if this is going to happen to Dr. McCullough, if it can happen to him, then we're gonna keep our mouths shut. So I was very much used as an example, I think, nationally. And so I don't get an email from any of my former friends, not a text, not a phone call,
Uh,
nothing, zero, as if I don't exist. It's just
like
it's
friends, like you're just not even colleagues, but like you had actual friends turn their
no, no.
back on
We
you.
used to go to the parties at Christmas time, all that. No, no, no more doctor parties, no more invitations. But at the same time, a whole new set of friends. And the new
Okay.
set of friends are people who are disturbed. They've had similar experiences. They know something's going on. They know censorship is, violating, our guaranteed rights. they see horrible things happening in terms of side effects and just lack of treatment. And so kind of it's almost out with one group and in with the new group. But the question is, what about the old group? What happened? Like, well, what are they thinking at this point in time? What are they thinking? Are my former colleagues, are they 100% behind this massive industry of gender change? Are they all on board with this? Is this all okay? Suddenly, we didn't talk about it 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's like we switched from one crisis to now we're obsessed with another
Right.
thing. And I talked about this with Jimmy Dore a couple weeks ago. Everyone was very comfortable shaming one group of people who decided again, who wanted to live their lives a certain way and do what they wanted to do and have their medical freedom. But now that maybe there's new information several years later, it just seems like no one's apologizing. Is anybody reaching out and be like, sorry, we were really wrong. Like we really were out of line. We were just falling in line with the mainstream narrative. We're just falling in line with big pharma. I just don't see a lot of apologizing.
Well, have you seen any apologies? Let's just take the last 10 years of politics, of various social media. Have you seen anybody come out and apologize about anything?
Nope.
I can't think of it, but yet apologies are so powerful. So let me give you an example. Do you remember the football player Michael Vick? Remember him?
Mhm. The
He was
pitbull guy.
Yeah, he was such a phenom. He could run, he could pass. He kind of was really a game changer player. Well, he got involved in this dog fighting thing. It was awful. Every dog lover in America wanted this guy, including my mom. My mom's a dog lover. And they're like, he's an awful guy. He's terrible. You know what Michael Vick did? He was involved. They started to bring him up on civil charges. He went in and he said, you know what? I am sorry. I did this. I am guilty. I'll go to jail because I know I made a big mistake and I'll go to jail right now. He just went to jail, said he's sorry. They, behaved in jail, got out early, returned to the NFL. And it just showed you, I said, my gosh, that is so powerful of making an apology. But yet, we've been through now several presidents of the United States. They haven't apologized about anything, nothing, zero.
Pretending it didn't happen.
I think it would be so powerful to say, you know what, I was poorly advised, or my view has changed. And, what I've said now is I've gotten up. I was recently at Clay Clark. I don't know if you've ever been to Clay Clark, We Awaken America. Have you ever been to one of those?
No, I haven't been there, but I know who he is.
Oh, but they have these incredible rallies. Thousands of people show up. It's all these. It's really, you really get fired up. You should go. I'll nominate you next time to be on stage. But okay. I've done a couple of them, and what I've said is that, listen, I've done more media and given more scientific commentary on the crisis than anybody. Actually, if you count the hours, more than anybody in the federal government, anybody at any of the agencies, any of the other doctors. And what I tell people is, listen, my views have changed as the crisis has unfolded. But on the issues, I've been incredibly consistent, and I've been right. And I've challenged people, find where I have been wrong. And I can tell you, if I was wrong, I would catch it immediately. And I'll give you one example, is when I went on Joe Rogan, it was right before there was the next mutation. And I made a comment regarding recurrent infections. And then as soon as it became clear that recurrent infections could happen with the new strain, I mean, it literally, people were pounding me. You said you couldn't get it twice. Within a day, I was on Laura Ingraham. I said, you know what? It's changed. You can get it now a second time. And
and now it's very common. People have had it 2, 3.
Yeah. But I corrected myself, and I was very clear with the public on this. And you know what? People didn't try to fry me on this. I said, listen, it changed. And so I've changed over time. And, I can tell you, if I was ever in a leadership position in the federal government, I would be apologizing all the time, because apologies are powerful and our leaders have to be strong enough to apologize. It's those who issue no apologies, they're weak.
I agree. This is from Gino Bisconti, my good friend and fellow comedian. The same thing went Went on in the world of comedy, Doc. You lost the stupid friends and bonded with new ones, and you bonded together to fight. First time, long time, by the way. Yes, my friend Gino, he's a huge fan of yours. He was very excited that I was going to have you on the show today. From mandatory mandatory Mayo, I'll shorten it to that. Thank you for having Dr. McCullough on. You two are my superheroes. Oh,
Okay, that name, that username just got you booted off of
yeah,
YouTube.
thanks a lot.
Come on. Yes, everybody knows what that is.
Daniel Jagger, do you see the rise of transgenderism and artificial intelligence merging into transhumanism as Pandora's box we shouldn't open?
Oh boy, we just did
boy.
a show on my radio show. I have a podcast too. It's not like nearly as good as yours. It's called McCullough Report, but I do one called Pulse with Malcolm Magruder, who's the voice of the nation, Malcolm Out Loud. And we talked about Elon Musk's Neuralink. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
That's where you bore a hole in the head and implant a chip. But
then you don't need Alexa anymore. You can be your own Alexa.
Yeah, that's kind of the grotesque visualization of transhumanism. But transhumanism is this desire to change the human body, and it's been articulated by Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. And when I was on Laura Ingraham one time, we played a joke on Laura on a Friday where I said he reminds me of Ernst Stavros Blofeld, the chief villain Spectre in Bond. He reminds me of the James Bond villain.
He does look
but
like
anyhow,
that.
Klaus Schwab has said that the fourth industrial revolution is we won't be changing any machines or computers. We're going to change the human being. And it's, oh boy, the beauty of humanity is human beings as they are, as a gift from God, not something that we would actually begin to change. Now, you could say, well, we're changed now when we get a dental filling or we get a pacemaker or a hip replacement. But what Klaus Schwab is talking about and what Daniel's talking about here is changing the human mind.
DNA even too. Interesting.
But the answer to Daniel's question is, yeah, I do see transgenderism as a step towards transhumanism. That is, and the term that's the spookiest term in that whole field? Gender fluid. Gender fluid. That almost sounds like we're part of a primordial DNA soup where there's X chromosomes and Y chromosomes, and they're kind of floating around in a goo. In the science fiction movie, have you ever noticed the goo is always kind of neon green?
Mm-hmm.
You notice that? Yeah. So it kind of gender fluid makes me think that we're kind of have green goop inside of us, and we're just kind of flowing around, and we don't know what's going to pop out where.
Yeah, and not the kind of gender fluid that would end up in a teenager's sock. Not in that kind of way. Some of these super chats I'm going to answer. I'm gonna bring up when we're just on Rumble because they have to do with certain
have we been
topics.
kicked off of YouTube yet? I mean,
not yet. We're still there.
Oh my gosh, Chrissie, you and I are going to set the record. Let's keep going. Okay. I've never seen live on YouTube. Usually my name gets me kicked off. You spelled my name correctly. That's usually a death knell for YouTube.
Oh my gosh. I want to know.
Listen, they've got censor. They're called content mediation. They have content moderation officers assigned to me, and they're connected to. Remember, the FBI had about 80 or current or former agents in Twitter. God knows how many are in YouTube. They are part of countermeasures for the crisis, and undoubtedly some are assigned to me because they're talking about me in their emails back and forth. So you can just put two and two together.
Very popular.
I bet if we did a search on you, I bet you'd show up, and I bet Jimmy Dore would show up, and yeah, I bet Tucker Carlson showed up, and Ken Paxton showed up. Oh yeah,
for sure. I want to know what was it like for your the close friends that stuck by you, your wife, your family, were they targeted as well? What was the attacks on your, the people who stuck by you and your family during all this?
Well, you've never met my wife. She is so amazingly beautiful and fun and friendly. She smiles all the time. It's impossible not to like her. So she has not been targeted at all. It's like people love her.
That's good. That's
Yeah,
great.
people love her. So no, there wasn't any family collateral damage. I think it was just these,
Your
you know,
reputation, your
it was
whole
just that,
yeah.
you know who the meanest, toughest things came from? Anonymous fact checkers. Anonymous people who can't even say we don't even know who they are. Like, for instance, the people who write my Wikipedia page.
Oh god, yeah, I was just
Oh
looking
my
at
gosh.
that.
I never realized Wikipedia, it's not like your own resume. You don't get to keep your own Wikipedia.
Nope, someone
Someone
else
is
has to write
actually
that for you.
writing it. You can't change it. When you go to your Wikipedia and say, "Can you please take this down?" That I don't want to have my resume on Wikipedia. They go, "We're not taking it down." And there was one guy I checked about a year ago. There's one guy called the Alt Man. God knows what it is. He is. Yeah, I know he's in Illinois somewhere. He's made 275 entries on my Wikipedia page. Like, what is
Wow,
this
he's
guy
a real
doing? Is he
he's
following my
obsessed.
every move? And I don't approve that things that are there. Some of that stuff is not even right at all. I've had a lawsuit, by the way, by a health system that said I'm dragging their name into the media. I'm not doing it. Wikipedia is writing this. These producers are putting all this stuff all over. One thing people need to realize is that once you're in the media, you don't have control over what's going on. So if we were to search, I could search right now, Google. I bet there's probably 20 million hits or more. 20
Wow.
million. I checked one time, it was 800,000 profiles. There's no way you can possibly, have any policing over one's profile. And can you imagine LeBron James or, Elon Musk or whatever? There's no control over what's going
Right.
on. The media is its own thing. What I tell people is I said, listen, look at the words that I have written in opinion editorials and look at the words that I am saying and take them for evaluation. Everyone else's commentary, particularly these anonymous fact checkers, they simply are putting out false counterclaims. Like, I'll make a specific medical conclusion, sometimes based on my own research, my own publication, and then the fact checker will say, not true. So, what? Okay. How does that work? How does this anonymous person just simply put out a false claim? And that's what's going on. I think actually this is all part of what's called the biopharmaceutical complex. This is money flowing around. Some of these fact-checking organizations, if you actually look at who they are, a lot of them are just graduate students. They're probably getting a little stipend. One of them is called the Virality Project. Ooh, sounds good.
And they fact check you, someone who's got
Look
all
at
of
these-
the education.
Some of these kids haven't even passed their classes yet, and somehow they have some credentials that they're fact checking. I mean, there's these little kind of IT shops that are grant funded by Gates Foundation or some of these others. And they're at Stanford. One's at one of my alma maters, University of Washington. I've been critical of them, where they're just students, and there's some grant money that comes down, and they're hanging out on the internet, hunting down Chrissie or Dr. McCullough, and just putting out this false information because they feel like they're funded to do that by this biopharmaceutical complex.
And the amount of effort that goes into, fact checkers always mention, oh, you need a credible source. You are a credible source. So the job of making you less credible requires a lot of work. Yeah, the stripping away of your titles and your licenses. Like, there's a lot of work to do to turn you into an uncredible source. And
from the time I graduated from high school to the time I was like finally finished with my education, that was 17 years. And then on top of that, now I have all the years of clinical experience. And so, in the area of heart and kidney disease, I'm the most published person in my field in the world in history. So if I say a lab test shows this, I mean it. When I say a drug does this, I mean it. When I say something is not safe, I mean it. And, there's, put it this way, there's never been a chief of medicine, a chief of infectious disease, a dean, anybody at my level that's ever disagreed with me. Ever. They are silent. They can't even send a bad email. So if the chief of medicine at a major university comes out and says, oh, I disagree with Dr. McCullough, these things are really safe or whatever, I'll say, ooh, let's have a conversation. Those people have been silent. The only people who are, in a sense, trying to do it are these anonymous. I think they're just kind of low-level graduate students from all over the world. And these in these consortiums, and they just are out there wreaking havoc in the internet. So
Yeah,
they
they're faceless, they're nameless, they're just these fact
right.
checkers, and it's anyone you have a conversation with, like, you can go toe to toe with because you have stats, you have information, like, you'll win in a real conversation. It's just they
Well,
try to chip away at your credibility.
well, people have said they want to debate, and I've gone into certain towns, and we've, been on the campuses and asked the deans and other people show up, and they haven't showed up. We've had chairs for them. I've
Wow.
testified 3 times in the Senate, and we had chairs for all the people in charge of the public agencies. Here we are, experts going to come to Washington, learn how to treat this problem, know the information cold, and they won't show up. They actually will
Wow.
not show up to face us. And these are our employees. It's not vice versa. I don't work for them. They work for me. And I'm taking my time, my effort, my money to go travel to Washington, and they don't show up. And they're my employee. This lack of respectfulness to the employment relationship is really a problem. And now they've all stepped down. Everybody who's invited, they're essentially stepping down all over the world. I think largely in shame.
Wow, and no one's really personally or privately reached out to apologize to you or anything
No,
close to that? Not surprising. There was a ton of propaganda, as we all know, last couple of years. Do you feel like certain groups of people had more propaganda thrown at them than others to make a certain medical decision? Who do you think was do you feel like certain groups were targeted or the propaganda was more heavily I guess just targeted towards them because I notice the kind of propaganda that was directed at women. Very much were preying on this. You have to be a good mom. You have to be a good
okay.
granddaughter. You don't want to, you don't want to put other people. They very much preyed upon, I think, a woman's responsibility for caring for others and like that sort of preying upon our people-pleasing tendencies, you know?
It's true. I think there was a ton of propaganda in the military. Do it because this is part of the team, and you could infect the entire squadron. The mothers, I think this was particularly diabolical. Not only did they have to do it to protect others, but the idea is do it to their children. So do it to your child who really doesn't need it to protect the grandparents.
You have to be you have to be a good mom and do this. You don't wanna
Use your kids as a human shield for something that's brand new, not proven, really worrisome. Do this to your children to use them as human shields to protect others. I thought that was particularly diabolical. Clearly, mothers were targeted. Those in the military targeted. You know who else was targeted? The media, Screen Actors Guild, actors.
Mm.
Do this because you're in the public light. You need to show that are doing this for it. And you saw all this kind of this guilt and shaming and virtue signaling. Hey, I did it. I did it to protect
Oh,
others.
the selfies, the gloating, the stickers,
You don't hear too many, and he's a nice guy. Years ago, I did a show with him. I really like him. He's my favorite weatherman, Al Roker. Al's the nicest guy, but the first time he did it on TV. And he
ugh.
had this young doctor, and I'll never forget, in New York City, and he asked the doctor, "Is it safe?" And the doctor goes, "Well, yeah, I guess it's kind of safe." And he goes, "Okay, I guess I'll take it." So he takes it, and he takes several more. And of course, it doesn't work. So he gets the illness anyway, late summer. Then he spends last fall hospitalized a couple times with blood clots. He nearly lost his life with blood clots. And it's like, good grief. I mean, someone who was pushing these, Al Roker, no longer. Now he won't mention it. He won't mention it again. Another one, virtue signaling, Deion Sanders. Great two-way player, played for Dallas Cowboys, baseball and football. Deion Sanders, you got to take it, man. He said, Aaron Rodgers is being selfish because he's not taking it. You got to take it, man. He's pushing his team. He's done videos. I'm going to take it. Probably took 2 or 3 of these. Deion Sanders gets blood clots, arterial blood clots. He has 9 surgeries. His toes amputated. He's coaching a team at the time. He comes back to the sidelines in a wheelchair with his feet propped up. He makes a whole docuseries about everything he went through. Never mentions that he took it. And then in the end, never hear him mention it again. Never. Another one, Bruce Arians, former coach of the Bucs. Oh, everybody at the Bucs took it, 100% compliant. Yeah, got to take it. He spends this fall in the hospital with inflammation of the heart muscle, which the FDA says it causes. And sure enough, Bruce Arians never mentions it again. It is person after person. How about Justin?
Hold on a second, Peter. This is a great time we are going to fully go over to Rumble because you're on a roll. I am just going to quickly